Imagine if you could become 1% better every single day. It sounds small, almost insignificant. But if you improve by just 1% daily, by the end of the year, you'll be 37 times better than when you started. On the other hand, if you get 1% worse every day, those small declines compound and can push your life in the wrong direction. The difference between success and failure is often tiny daily habits. In this video, we'll break down the key ideas from the best-selling book Atomic Habits by James Clear. You'll learn why small habits create massive results, how to build good habits easily, how to break bad habits, and how tiny changes can completely transform your life. Let's begin. Now let's first talk about what are atomic habits. Before we talk about building habits or breaking them, we need to understand what an atomic habit actually is and why it is so powerful. In Atomic Habits, James Clear explains that the word atomic carries two meanings: something extremely small, a fundamental unit that forms a larger system. Think about atoms in science. An atom is incredibly tiny, almost invisible. But everything around us, buildings, mountains, even our own bodies, is made from these tiny units. In the same way, our lives are built from tiny habits. Your daily actions, what you eat, what you read, how you spend your time, how you react to problems, may seem small. But when repeated day after day, they shape who you become. So an atomic habit is a small behavior that is easy to do, repeated consistently, and capable of producing remarkable results over time. Most people believe that big success requires big actions. We imagine dramatic changes like completely transforming our lifestyle overnight, studying for 8 hours a day, exercising intensely every morning, suddenly becoming extremely disciplined. But the truth is that lasting success rarely comes from massive changes. Instead, it comes from small improvements repeated consistently. James Clear explains this idea using the concept of compounding. You may already know compound interest in finance. If you invest money and it grows a little every year, eventually that growth multiplies and becomes huge. Habits work the same way. Every small action you repeat becomes a tiny investment in your future self. For example, if you read 10 pages every day, that seems insignificant today. But in 1 year, you'll read about 3,650 pages, which equals 12 to 15 books. If you save a small amount of money every day, over time it builds into financial security. If you practice a skill for 20 minutes daily, you will become far more skilled than someone who practices occasionally. The power lies not in the size of the action, but in its consistency. One of the most powerful ideas in the book is the 1% rule. Imagine improving by just 1% every day. That improvement seems almost meaningless. But mathematically, if you improve by 1% every day for a year, you become about 37 times better. On the other hand, if you decline by 1% every day, you gradually move towards zero. This shows something important. Small daily choices create massive long-term differences. Think about two people. At the beginning of the year, they are almost identical. They have the same abilities, the same opportunities, and similar goals. But their daily habits are slightly different. Person A reads a little every day, exercises regularly, improves a skill consistently. Person B watches excessive entertainment, procrastinates often, avoids difficult work. At first, the difference between them is almost invisible. But after months or years, the gap becomes enormous. This is the power of compound habits. One reason people struggle with habits is because results are delayed. When you start a good habit, the reward is usually not immediate. For example, you exercise today, but your body looks the same tomorrow. You read a book today, but you don't feel smarter immediately. You save money today, but your financial situation doesn't change overnight. Because results take time, people often feel discouraged. They think their effort is not working. James Clear calls this stage the Valley of Disappointment. It's the period where your efforts are happening below the surface, but visible results have not appeared yet. Many people quit during this stage. But the truth is that progress is happening invisibly. Think about an ice cube sitting in a cold room. The temperature is slowly increasing. At 25 degrees Fahrenheit, nothing happens. At 28 degrees Fahrenheit, nothing happens. At 30 degrees Fahrenheit, still nothing changes. But when the temperature reaches 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the ice suddenly begins to melt. Did the change happen only at 32 degrees Fahrenheit? No. The previous temperature increases were slowly preparing the transformation. Habits work exactly like this. Your efforts may appear invisible for a long time, but eventually they reach a breakthrough point. Another deep idea in the book is that habits are not just actions. They are the building blocks of identity. Every time you repeat a habit, you are reinforcing a belief about yourself. For example, if you read regularly, you start seeing yourself as a reader. If you exercise consistently, you start seeing yourself as a healthy person. If you practice writing daily, you begin to see yourself as a writer. Each small habit becomes evidence for the type of person you believe you are. And once your identity changes, your behavior becomes easier to maintain. Because now, you're not forcing yourself. You're simply acting in alignment with who you believe you are. To understand how powerful small changes are, imagine a plane flying from New York to Los Angeles. If the pilot changes the direction by only a few degrees, the plane will eventually land in a completely different city. The change seems tiny at the beginning, but over a long distance, the difference becomes enormous. Habits work in exactly the same way. Small daily choices determine the direction of your life. If your habits improve slightly each day, your life gradually moves towards success. If your habits decline slightly each day, your life slowly moves in the opposite direction. The change is subtle in the beginning, but over years, it becomes dramatic. The central message of Atomic Habits is simple but profound. You do not need massive life changes to transform your future. Instead, focus on small improvements repeated consistently. Because over time, small habits create small improvements, which compound into remarkable results. Your future is not shaped by one big decision, but by thousands of small choices you make every day. And once you understand this principle, you stop chasing overnight success. Instead, you focus on becoming just a little better every single day. Goals versus systems. Why most people never achieve lasting success. One of the most powerful and life-changing ideas in Atomic Habits by James Clear is the difference between goals and systems. At first, this idea sounds simple, but once you truly understand it, it completely changes the way you think about success, discipline, motivation, productivity, and even happiness. Because most people spend their entire lives focusing on goals while ignoring the systems that actually create those goals. And this is one of the biggest reasons why people start but never continue. Dream but never achieve. Plan but never transform. James Clear says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." This sentence is the heart of the entire book. To fully understand it, we first need to understand what goals and systems really are. What is a goal? A goal is the result you want to achieve. Examples: I want to lose weight. I want to become rich. I want to get top grades. I want to become successful. I want to write a book. I want to start a business. Goals focus on outcomes. They focus on the future. They answer the question, what do I want? And there's nothing wrong with goals. Goals are useful because they give direction. Without goals, life becomes random. Goals help us imagine a better future. They create excitement. They give us hope. When someone sets a new goal, they often feel energized and motivated. For example, at the beginning of every year, millions of people create New Year resolutions. This year, I'll wake up early. I'll start exercising. I'll study consistently. I'll stop wasting time. I'll completely change my life. For a few days, motivation feels powerful. People feel emotionally charged. They buy notebooks. They make schedules. They watch motivational videos. They imagine a transformed future. But then something happens. After a few weeks, the excitement fades. Discipline weakens. Distractions return. Old habits come back. and eventually most people quit. Why? Because goals alone are not enough. The hidden problem with goals. The world constantly tells us, set bigger goals. But almost nobody teaches, build better systems. And this is dangerous because goals create several psychological traps. Let's deeply understand them. Problem 1. Goals create an illusion of progress. One strange thing about goals is that simply having a goal can make people feel productive, even when they haven't done any real work. For example, a student says, "I'm going to study 8 hours daily." At that moment, they feel motivated. But feeling motivated is not the same as building a system. Many people spend more time planning success, imagining success, talking about success, than actually creating daily routines that lead to success. Goals can create emotional satisfaction without real action. This is why some people become addicted to motivation videos and inspirational quotes. They love the feeling of ambition, but they never build the systems necessary for transformation. Real progress begins when you stop obsessing over goals and start focusing on daily behavior. Problem 2. Goals focus too much on the finish line. Goals make people believe, "I'll finally be happy once I achieve this." Examples: I'll be confident once I lose weight. I'll enjoy life once I become rich. I'll relax once I finish this exam. I'll feel successful once people admire me. This mindset creates a dangerous habit, living constantly in the future. People postpone happiness. They train themselves to believe life will begin later. But here's the truth. If you hate the process, you'll struggle to maintain the result. Imagine someone who wants to lose weight. They follow an extreme diet. They force themselves through painful routines. They hate every moment of the process. Eventually, they reach the goal. But because they never built a sustainable system, they quickly return to old habits. The weight comes back. Why? Because temporary goals cannot create permanent transformation. Only systems can. Problem 3. Winners and losers often have the same goals. This is one of the most eye-opening ideas in the book. James Clear explains that goals do not separate successful people from unsuccessful people, because both often want the same thing. Think about sports. Every athlete entering the Olympics wants to win gold. Every team wants the championship. Every student wants high grades. Every business wants profit. If goals alone created success, then everyone with the same goal would achieve the same results. But that's not reality. The difference lies in habits, preparation, routines, consistency, systems. The champion is usually not the person who wanted success more. The champion is usually the person with the better system. So what is a system? A system is the collection of daily behaviors, routines, and habits that repeatedly move you toward a result. If the goal is become healthy, then the system is regular exercise, healthy eating, quality sleep, drinking water, reducing junk food. If the goal is become a writer, then the system is writing daily, reading regularly, practicing communication, learning, storytelling. If the goal is become financially successful, then the system is budgeting money, learning skills, investing consistently, avoiding unnecessary spending. Goals are about results. Systems are about processes. Goals are momentary. Systems are continuous. Goals tell you what you want. Systems determine whether you'll actually get it. Systems create automatic progress. One reason systems are powerful is because they reduce dependence on motivation. Motivation is unreliable. Some days you feel inspired. Other days you feel lazy, distracted, tired, or emotionally drained. If your success depends entirely on motivation, consistency becomes impossible. But systems create structure. They allow progress even when emotions change. For example, a professional writer doesn't wait for inspiration to write. They have a system. Sit at the desk every morning, write for a fixed amount of time, repeat daily. An athlete doesn't train only when motivated. Training becomes part of their routine. This is why systems outperform motivation, because systems continue even when emotions fluctuate. The difference between interest and commitment. Goals often create interest. Systems create commitment. Anyone can say, "I want success," but systems answer, "What are you willing to repeat every day?" That's the real question. Because your future is not shaped by your occasional ambitions, it is shaped by your repeated actions. A person who studies occasionally but intensely will usually lose to someone who studies moderately but consistently. Consistency beats intensity in the long run. Systems shape identity. This is where the idea becomes even deeper. Systems don't just produce results, they produce identity. Every repeated action becomes evidence for the type of person you believe you are. For example, when you write daily, you begin seeing yourself as a writer. When you exercise consistently, a healthy person. When you study regularly, a disciplined learner. And identity is powerful because humans naturally try to act consistently with who they believe they are. This is why systems create lasting transformation, because they slowly change self-image. Goals focus on achieving something. Systems focus on becoming someone. And becoming is far more powerful than achieving. Tiny systems create massive life differences. Most people underestimate small routines because they seem boring and insignificant. For example, reading 10 pages daily, saving small amounts of money, walking regularly, waking up slightly earlier, practicing a skill for 20 minutes. These habits look tiny, but life is heavily influenced by accumulation. Think of water slowly cutting through rock. One drop seems weak, but repeated over years, it reshapes stone. Habits work the same way. Tiny systems, repeated consistently, create extraordinary outcomes. The plane analogy. Imagine an airplane leaving Los Angeles for New York. If the pilot changes direction by only a few degrees, the plane eventually lands in Washington, D.C. instead of New York. At the beginning, the shift seems invisible, but over long distances, small changes create massive differences. Your habits are your direction, and your systems determine where your life eventually lands. A small daily improvement may seem meaningless today, but over years, it can completely transform your health, your knowledge, your career, your confidence, your relationships, your future. Fall in love with the process. This may be the most important lesson of all. Highly successful people do not merely love results. They learn to love the process. Writers love writing. Athletes love training. Musicians love practicing. Because if you only enjoy results, you'll constantly struggle. Results are temporary moments, but systems are daily life, and your quality of life depends heavily on whether you can enjoy the process you repeat every day. The real secret of success. The real secret is not extreme motivation, sudden transformation, giant breakthroughs. The real secret is building systems that are sustainable, repeatable, realistic, consistent. Success is rarely one dramatic moment. Success is usually hidden inside ordinary daily routines, the things people do repeatedly behind the scenes. Final message. Goals are important because they provide direction, but systems are what create transformation. Goals are the destination, systems are the journey, and in the long run, the journey shapes who you become. So instead of constantly asking, what goal should I achieve? Start asking, what daily system can I follow consistently? Because your future is not built by one huge decision. It is built by small actions repeated every single day. And ultimately, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Number 4, identity-based habits. One of the deepest and most powerful ideas in Atomic Habits by James Clear is this: real behavior change is identity change. Most people try to change their lives by focusing on outcomes. They say things like, I want to lose weight. I want to become successful. I want to stop procrastinating. I want to read more books. I want to wake up early. But according to James Clear, this approach often fails because it focuses only on what you want to achieve, not on who you want to become. And this is one of the biggest reasons people struggle to maintain habits. Because lasting change does not happen when you change your actions temporarily. Lasting change happens when you change your identity. The 3 layers of behavior change. James Clear explains that behavior change happens on 3 levels. 1. Outcomes. This is the outermost layer. It focuses on results. Examples: losing weight, getting good grades, making money, building muscles, and becoming productive. Most people begin here. They focus on external achievements. 2. Processes. This layer focuses on systems and habits. Examples: exercising regularly, studying daily, managing time properly, and practicing skills consistently. This is better than focusing only on goals because it emphasizes routines and behavior. But there's an even deeper level. 3. Identity. This is the deepest layer. It focuses on beliefs about yourself. Examples: I am a healthy person. I am a disciplined person. I am a reader. I am a writer. I am someone who keeps promises. This level is powerful because identity controls behavior. Whether you realize it or not, every person has an internal story about who they are, and most people behave in ways that reinforce that story. Why identity matters so much. Human beings have a deep psychological need to remain consistent with their identity. If someone believes, I am bad at math, they will unconsciously avoid mathematical challenges. If someone believes, I'm not disciplined, they will continue acting undisciplined. If someone believes, I'm always late, they continue arriving late. The problem is that many people unknowingly carry negative identities for years, and then they wonder why change feels difficult. Because behavior that conflicts with identity creates internal resistance. For example, imagine someone trying to quit smoking, but someone else says, I don't smoke. That statement reflects a changed identity, and identity-based change is far more powerful than outcome-based change. Most people start change the wrong way. Most people focus on, what do I want to achieve? But James Clear suggests a better question. Who do I want to become? This completely changes the approach to habits. For example, instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, you ask, what kind of person runs marathons? Answer: someone who trains consistently, someone who values health, someone who doesn't quit easily. Now the focus shifts from the finish line to identity. Similarly, instead of, I want to write a book, ask, what kind of person writes books? Answer: someone who writes regularly, someone who practices creativity, someone who studies communication. This shift is incredibly important because goals focus on achieving, identity focuses on becoming, and becoming creates long-term transformation. Every action is a vote for your identity. This is one of the most beautiful ideas in the book. James Clear explains, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Think about that carefully. Every small habit is not just an action, it is evidence. Evidence that shapes your self-image. For example, every workout is a vote for becoming a healthy person. Every page you read is a vote for becoming a learner. Every promise you keep is a vote for becoming disciplined. Every time you practice a skill, you vote for becoming skilled. And similarly, every act of procrastination, every broken promise, every repeated bad habit also becomes evidence. This is why habits matter so much, because habits continuously shape identity. Identity is built through repetition. People often think identity changes suddenly, but identity usually changes gradually through repeated behavior. Imagine a person who has never exercised regularly. At first, going to the gym feels uncomfortable. Why? Because the behavior conflicts with their current identity. Their mind says, this is not who I am. But if they continue consistently, something interesting happens. After weeks or months, the person begins thinking, maybe I am someone who takes care of health. Eventually, I am a healthy person. The identity changes through repeated evidence. The power of identity-based habits. Why small habits are so powerful. Small habits may seem insignificant, but they carry enormous power. Why? Because every repetition strengthens a certain identity. Each action you take is like casting a vote for the type of person you want to become. Over time, those votes accumulate and shape how you see yourself. The danger of negative identity. Identity can work against you too. Many people unintentionally build destructive identities. Examples: I'm lazy. I always fail. I can never stay consistent. I'm just not smart. I'm bad with money. The brain begins collecting evidence to support these beliefs, And eventually, the identity becomes self-fulfilling. This creates a dangerous cycle. Negative belief, negative behavior, more evidence leads to stronger negative belief. Breaking this cycle requires changing identity through small wins. Why small wins matter. This is why James Clear emphasizes starting small, because small habits create proof. Suppose someone wants to become a reader. Reading one page may seem insignificant, but psychologically, it matters. Because the person is proving, I am someone who reads. That identity shift is more important than the number of pages. Similarly, writing one paragraph daily may seem tiny, but it proves I am a writer. And once identity changes, consistency becomes easier. Because now, the habit aligns with self-image. True confidence comes from evidence. Many people wait to feel confident before taking action. But confidence rarely appears first. Confidence grows from evidence. Every time you successfully repeat a habit, your brain gains proof. I can do this. Over time, these small proofs accumulate, and eventually, your self-belief becomes stronger. This is why action is so important. Not because one action changes your life instantly, but because repeated action changes how you see yourself. Identity creates automatic behavior. The most powerful habits eventually become automatic because they become part of identity. For example, a disciplined person doesn't constantly debate whether to study. A healthy person naturally chooses healthier actions. A writer naturally writes. At this stage, habits require less willpower because they align with identity. And this is the ultimate goal: to become the type of person for whom the desired behavior feels natural. Focus on becoming, not just achieving. Society often teaches us to obsess over achievements, grades, money, awards, appearance, status. But achievements are temporary moments. Identity lasts much longer. You may achieve a goal once, but identity determines whether you can sustain it. For example, a person can lose weight temporarily, but if they never become a healthy person, the old habits usually return. A student may study hard for one exam, but becoming a disciplined learner creates long-term growth. Identity-based habits create lasting transformation because they change the person, not just the result. The core message. The real purpose of habits is not merely to achieve external success. The real purpose of habits is to shape your identity. Every action you repeat is slowly telling a story about who you are. And over time, that story becomes reality. So instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? Start asking, who do I want to become? Then build small daily habits that reinforce that identity. Because every small action matters. Every repetition matters. Every habit is a vote. And eventually, those votes shape the person you become. The 4 laws of behavior change. The framework behind every habit. So far, we've learned that small habits compound over time, that systems are more important than goals, and that lasting change happens when we focus on identity. But this raises an important question. If habits are so powerful, why do some habits stick while others disappear? Why is it easy to scroll through social media for an hour, but difficult to read a book for 10 minutes? Why do bad habits seem automatic, while good habits require effort? According to James Clear, the answer lies in understanding how habits actually work. Every habit, whether good or bad, follows a predictable pattern. Once you understand this pattern, you can intentionally design habits that work in your favor instead of against you. This discovery forms the foundation of the most practical section of Atomic Habits, the 4 laws of behavior change. But before we explore the 4 laws, we first need to understand the habit loop. James Clear explains that every habit passes through 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and reward. These 4 stages create a continuous feedback loop that drives almost every behavior in our lives. Let's see how it works. Imagine your phone vibrates. The vibration is the cue. Your brain notices the signal and becomes curious. That curiosity is the craving. You want to know who sent the message or what happened, so you pick up the phone and check it. That action is the response. Finally, You satisfy your curiosity by seeing the notification. That feeling of satisfaction is the reward. Because the reward feels good, your brain remembers the process. The next time your phone vibrates, you're even more likely to repeat the behavior. Over time, this cycle becomes automatic. The same pattern drives nearly every habit. Seeing a plate of cookies, smelling fresh coffee, hearing an alarm clock, or walking into a gym. Each habit begins with a cue, creates a craving, leads to a response, and ends with a reward. Once James Clear understood this pattern, he realized something remarkable. If every habit follows these 4 stages, then every habit can be improved by optimizing these stages. This insight led to the creation of the 4 laws of behavior change. To build a good habit, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And to break a bad habit, simply reverse these laws. Make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying. This framework is simple, but incredibly powerful. Almost every successful habit can be strengthened using these 4 laws, and almost every unwanted habit can be weakened by reversing them. Over the next few sections, we'll explore each law in detail and see how you can use them to create lasting, positive change. Let's begin with the first law. Law 1. Make it obvious. Every habit begins with a cue. If a behavior is invisible, difficult to notice, or hidden from your awareness, it becomes much harder to perform consistently. That's why the first law of behavior change is simple. Make it obvious. Most people believe habits are primarily driven by motivation, but James Clear argues that environment often plays a much bigger role than motivation. We like to think that our decisions are fully conscious and intentional. In reality, many of our daily behaviors happen automatically in response to the cues around us. Think about how often you check your phone without consciously deciding to do it, how walking into the kitchen suddenly makes you want a snack, or how seeing your running shoes near the door reminds you to exercise. The environment is constantly influencing your behavior, whether you realize it or not. That's why one of the easiest ways to improve your habits is to make the cues for good habits more visible. Many people fail to build good habits because the cues are weak or hidden. Someone wants to read more books, but the book stays inside a drawer while the phone sits on the table. Someone wants to practice guitar, but the guitar remains inside its case under the bed. Someone wants to eat healthier, but unhealthy snacks are sitting in plain sight on the kitchen counter. In each case, the environment is encouraging one behavior and discouraging another. Over time, we naturally drift toward whatever is easiest to notice. This is why environment design is so powerful. Instead of relying on willpower, you redesign your surroundings so that good habits become the obvious choice. James Clear shares a simple principle. The people with the strongest self-control are often the people who need to use it the least. Why? Because they have designed their environment intelligently. Rather than fighting temptation every day, they reduce temptation before it appears. If you want to read more, place a book on your pillow. If you want to drink more water, keep a water bottle on your desk. If you want to practice guitar, leave the guitar in the middle of the room. If you want to study consistently, prepare your study materials before you go to sleep. The goal is simple. Make the cue impossible to ignore. The more visible a habit becomes, the more likely you are to perform it. One reason habits are difficult to change is because many of them operate on autopilot. We perform them without thinking. That's why James Clear recommends an exercise called the Habit Scorecard. For one day, write down your habits exactly as they occur. Wake up, check phone, brush teeth, drink coffee, open social media, eat breakfast, watch YouTube, study, exercise, and so on. The goal is not to judge yourself. The goal is awareness, because you cannot improve a habit that you fail to notice. Many people discover that they have dozens of unconscious behaviors influencing their lives every day. Awareness is the first step toward change. Another powerful strategy is called habit stacking. Instead of creating a habit from scratch,
You attach it to a habit that already exists. The formula is simple. After current habit, I will new habit. For example, after I brush my teeth, I will meditate for 1 minute. After I pour my morning coffee, I will read 1 page. After I finish lunch, I will take a 5-minute walk. After I sit at my desk, I will write 1 paragraph. This method works because existing habits already have strong cues. You're essentially borrowing the power of a habit that is already established. Instead of creating a new reminder, you're attaching the new behavior to a routine that already happens every day. Many people underestimate how much their surroundings shape their behavior, but small cues can produce surprisingly large effects. A visible book can increase reading. A prepared gym bag can increase exercise. A bowl of fruit can encourage healthier eating. A clean workspace can improve focus. Success is often less about motivation and more about creating an environment that naturally guides you toward the right actions. When good habits are obvious, you spend less energy forcing yourself to act. The environment does some of the work for you. The first law of behavior change teaches us a simple truth. People do not rise or fall based solely on willpower. They often rise or fall based on the cues surrounding them. If you want better habits, don't start by changing yourself. Start by changing your environment. Make the cues for good habits visible. Make the right choice the obvious choice. Because every habit begins with a cue. And the easier that cue is to see, the easier the habit becomes to perform. Now that we've learned how to make habits obvious, let's move to the second law of behavior change. Law 2. Make it attractive. Imagine 2 activities. One feels exciting, enjoyable, and rewarding. The other feels boring, difficult, and unpleasant. Which one are you more likely to repeat? The answer is obvious. Human beings naturally move toward things they find attractive and away from things they find unattractive. This simple truth forms the second law of behavior change. Make it attractive. If the first law focuses on making a habit visible, the second law focuses on making it desirable. Because no matter how obvious a habit is, you won't consistently perform it unless you actually want to do it. To understand why attraction is so important, we first need to understand the role of dopamine. When people hear the word dopamine, they often think it is the chemical of pleasure. But James Clear explains that dopamine is more closely connected to anticipation than enjoyment. In other words, dopamine spikes not only when we receive a reward, but often before we receive it. It rises when we expect something rewarding to happen. Think about how you feel when your favorite food is being prepared, a package you've been waiting for is about to arrive, or a movie you've been excited about is about to start. The anticipation itself feels motivating. This is dopamine at work. And because dopamine creates desire, it plays a major role in habit formation. The more attractive an opportunity appears, the more motivated we become to act. This is why social media, video games, and entertainment platforms are so effective at capturing attention. They continuously trigger anticipation and reward. The lesson is simple. If you want a habit to stick, make it something you look forward to. One of the most practical techniques in Atomic Habits is called temptation bundling. The idea is simple. Pair something you need to do with something you enjoy doing. In other words, combine a good habit with an enjoyable activity. For example, only listen to your favorite podcast while exercising. Only watch your favorite show while using a treadmill. Only enjoy a special coffee while studying, or only listen to your favorite music while cleaning your room. By linking a productive behavior with something pleasurable, you make the habit more attractive. Instead of focusing on the effort, your brain begins focusing on the reward. Over time, the habit becomes easier to repeat because it carries positive associations. Humans are social creatures. Whether we realize it or not, we constantly imitate the people around us. We adopt their behaviors, beliefs, preferences, and habits. James Clear explains that we are especially influenced by three groups: the close, the many, and the powerful. The close are the people we spend the most time with: family, friends, classmates, and coworkers. When healthy behaviors are normal within your group, adopting those behaviors becomes much easier. If your friends regularly exercise, exercising feels normal. If your family values reading, reading feels natural. If the people around you are ambitious and disciplined, those traits begin influencing your behavior as well. The many refers to larger groups. We often follow what appears popular or socially accepted, which is why trends spread so quickly. When a behavior becomes normal in a community, individuals naturally begin adopting it. The powerful are the people we admire: successful entrepreneurs, athletes, writers, teachers, and mentors. When we respect someone, we become more willing to copy their behaviors. This is why role models can have such a powerful impact on habit formation. One of the most effective ways to build better habits is to join an environment where the behavior you want is already considered normal. One of the most effective ways to build better habits is to join an environment where the behavior you want is already considered normal. If you want to become a reader, spend time around people who love books. If you want to become healthier, surround yourself with health-conscious individuals. If you want to improve your skills, join communities where learning and growth are valued. Willpower becomes much less necessary when the people around you naturally reinforce the behavior. Instead of fighting against your environment, you allow your environment to pull you forward. Another way to make habits attractive is by changing the way you describe them. Many people unconsciously frame good habits as burdens. They say, "I have to exercise, I have to study, I have to save money," or "I have to wake up early." Notice how these statements feel restrictive. Now compare them with, "I get to exercise, I get to learn, I get to improve, and I get to invest in my future." The activity remains exactly the same, but the emotional experience changes. What once felt like an obligation begins to feel like an opportunity. Sometimes the fastest way to make a habit attractive is to change the story you tell yourself about it. The second law of behavior change teaches us that habits become easier when they become desirable. People repeat behaviors they enjoy and avoid behaviors they dislike. So if you want a habit to last, don't rely only on discipline. Find ways to make the behavior genuinely appealing. Pair it with something enjoyable. Surround yourself with people who reinforce it, and learn to associate the habit with positive emotions. Because when a habit becomes attractive, motivation naturally follows. Now that we've learned how to make habits desirable, let's move to the third law of behavior change. Make it easy. Law 3. Make it easy. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to build new habits is believing that success requires extreme effort. They think they need more motivation, more discipline, and more willpower. So they create ambitious plans. I'm going to exercise for 2 hours every day. I'm going to read 50 pages daily. I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning. Or I'm going to completely transform my life starting tomorrow. The problem is that these plans often sound exciting in the beginning, but become difficult to maintain over time, and eventually, most people quit. This brings us to the third law of behavior change: make it easy. James Clear argues that when it comes to habits, the easier a behavior is to perform, the more likely you are to repeat it. And repetition is far more important than perfection, because habits are built through consistency, not intensity. Many people spend a lot of time preparing to change, but very little time actually changing. They watch videos, read articles, buy courses, create detailed plans, and research the perfect strategy. This feels productive, but James Clear makes an important distinction between motion and action. Motion is when you're planning, learning, and preparing. Action is when you're actually doing the behavior. Reading about fitness is motion. Going to the gym is action. Planning a business is motion. Making a sales call is action. Watching productivity videos is motion. Doing the work is action. Motion can make us feel busy, but action creates results. Many people remain stuck because they keep preparing instead of practicing. The goal is not to know more. The goal is to do more. A common question people ask is, how long does it take to form a habit? Some people say 21 days. Others say 30 days. But James Clear explains that the more important question is not time. The more important question is, how many repetitions does it take? Because habits are formed through practice. The more often you perform a behavior, the more automatic it becomes. Think about learning to drive. At first, every movement requires conscious attention. You think about the mirrors, the pedals, the steering wheel, and traffic signals. Everything feels difficult. But after enough repetitions, driving becomes automatic. The same principle applies to every habit. The faster you start repeating a behavior, the faster it becomes part of your routine. Human beings naturally prefer the path that requires the least amount of energy. This is not laziness, it's biology. Our brains are designed to conserve effort whenever possible. This is why we often choose convenience over intention. If junk food is easier to access than healthy food, we eat junk food. If the phone is easier to reach than a book, we scroll instead of reading. If distractions are easier than focused work, we become distracted. Instead of fighting this tendency, James Clear suggests using it to our advantage. Design your environment so that good habits require less effort. Want to eat healthier? Prepare healthy meals in advance. Want to exercise consistently? Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Want to practice guitar? Keep the guitar visible and ready to use. Want to read more? Place books in locations where you'll naturally see them. The easier the habit becomes, the more likely you'll perform it. Perhaps the most famous idea in this chapter is the 2-minute rule. The principle is simple. When starting a new habit, scale it down until it takes less than 2 minutes. Instead of read 30 pages, read 1 page. Instead of run 5 kilometers, put on your running shoes. Instead of study for 3 hours, open your textbook. Instead of meditate for 20 minutes, meditate for 1 minute. At first, this may seem too small to matter, but that's exactly the point. The goal is not to achieve extraordinary results immediately. The goal is to establish the habit, because a habit must be established before it can be improved. Most people focus on making habits bigger. James Clear recommends making them smaller. The easier the starting point, the less resistance you'll face. And once you begin, continuing often becomes much easier. Many people believe success comes from performing perfectly, but in reality, success often comes from simply showing up. A person who reads one page every day will eventually read more than someone who waits for the perfect moment. A person who writes one paragraph daily will outperform someone who writes only when inspired. A person who exercises for 5 minutes consistently will often achieve more than someone who exercises intensely for 1 week and then quits. The habit of showing up is more valuable than the size of the effort because consistency creates momentum, and momentum creates progress. One practical strategy James Clear recommends is reducing friction. Friction is anything that makes a behavior harder to perform. The fewer obstacles between you and a good habit, the more likely the habit will occur. If you want to practice piano, keep it accessible. If you want to drink more water, keep a bottle nearby. If you want to study, prepare your workspace in advance. If you want to exercise, choose a gym that's easy to reach. Small reductions in effort can produce surprisingly large increases in consistency. The third law of behavior change teaches us that successful habits are not necessarily the strongest habits. They are often the easiest habits. People naturally repeat behaviors that require less effort. So instead of asking, "How can I motivate myself more?" ask, "How can I make this habit easier?" Reduce friction. Start small. Focus on repetition. Master the habit of showing up, because every habit becomes powerful after it becomes automatic. And automation begins with simplicity. Now that we've learned how to make habits easy, let's move to the fourth and final law of behavior change. Law 4. Make it satisfying. Imagine performing a behavior and immediately receiving a reward. You feel good. You feel accomplished. You feel satisfied. What are the chances you'll do that behavior again? Very high. Now, imagine performing a behavior that feels difficult, uncomfortable, and unrewarding. Even if it's good for you, you'll probably struggle to repeat it consistently. This leads us to the fourth and final law of behavior change. Make it satisfying. The first 3 laws help you start a habit, but the fourth law helps you stick with it, because what is immediately rewarded gets repeated, and what is immediately punished gets avoided. This principle has shaped human behavior for thousands of years. Our ancestors survived by repeating actions that produced immediate benefits and avoiding actions that produced immediate pain. And the human brain still works largely the same way today. The challenge is that modern life often reverses this system. Most good habits have delayed rewards. Exercise improves your body months later. Studying shows results during exams. Saving money pays off years later. And eating healthy builds benefits slowly over time. In the moment, these habits often feel difficult because their rewards are delayed. Meanwhile, bad habits usually provide immediate satisfaction. Scrolling social media gives instant entertainment. Junk food gives instant pleasure. Procrastination gives instant relief. And skipping exercise gives instant comfort. This creates a dangerous imbalance where good long-term behaviors feel unrewarding now, while harmful behaviors feel rewarding immediately. That's why James Clear emphasizes making good habits satisfying right away through small, immediate rewards, like enjoying a short break after studying, listening to music after a workout, or celebrating small savings milestones. The reward doesn't need to be big. It just needs to reinforce the behavior so your brain learns that the habit is worth repeating. Another powerful tool is habit tracking, where you record each completed habit with a checkmark, calendar X, or app log. This creates visible evidence of consistency, and even small progress feels rewarding because it builds momentum and reinforces discipline. This leads to the principle of never break the chain, where each completed day adds another link, making you emotionally invested in maintaining consistency. If you miss a day, James Clear reminds us that missing once is an accident, but missing twice is the start of a new habit. So the key is not perfection, but quick recovery and getting back on track immediately. Accountability also strengthens satisfaction. When others know your commitments, whether through a partner, coach, or habit contract, the social pressure increases consistency. Ultimately, the strongest reward is not external at all, but internal. Every time you complete a habit, you reinforce the identity of who you are becoming. Reading reinforces the identity of a reader. Exercising reinforces a healthy identity. Writing reinforces a creator identity. And keeping promises to yourself reinforces discipline. This identity reinforcement is the deepest reward because it proves you are becoming the person you want to be. And that is the core lesson of the fourth law. Habits last when they feel satisfying, because lasting change doesn't come from achieving goals. It comes from becoming the kind of person who naturally lives that way. Now that we've explored the 4 laws of behavior change, we can finally understand how to break bad habits using the same framework. Breaking bad habits, the inversion of the 4 laws. So far, we've focused on building good habits. We've learned how to make habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. But what about the habits that hold us back? The ones we want to eliminate? The habits that waste time, damage health, reduce productivity, and stop us from becoming the person we want to be. Whether it's excessive social media use, procrastination, overeating, smoking, or any other unwanted behavior, the good news is simple. The same principles that build good habits can also break bad ones. James Clear explains that bad habits are not fundamentally different from good habits. They follow the exact same loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. The only difference is the outcome. Because of this shared structure, we can weaken bad habits by reversing the 4 laws of behavior change. Instead of making them obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, we make them invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. The first inversion is make it invisible. Every habit begins with a cue, and if you remove the cue, you weaken the habit. Many people think they have a self-control problem, but often they actually have an environment problem. If a phone is always within reach, notifications keep appearing, and apps are on the home screen, temptation becomes constant. Instead of relying on willpower, eliminate cues, remove distracting apps, turn off notifications, keep junk food out of sight, place your phone in another room, or unsubscribe from triggers. When the cue disappears, the craving weakens, and the habit fades. The second inversion is make it unattractive. Bad habits survive because we focus on their immediate rewards. Scrolling feels fun, junk food tastes good, procrastination feels relaxing, but ignore the long-term cost. To break a habit, you must flip the perspective and highlight what it truly takes from you: lost time, reduced health, missed opportunities, and weakened discipline. When a behavior becomes mentally linked with negative consequences instead of pleasure, its attraction starts to fade. The third inversion is make it difficult. Humans naturally choose the path of least resistance, so if a bad habit is easy, it will repeat. The solution is to increase friction, add steps, delays, and obstacles. Delete addictive apps, log out repeatedly, block distracting websites, keep unhealthy food hard to access, or store devices in another room. Even small increases in effort can break automatic behavior and create space for conscious choice. The harder something becomes, the less often it happens. The fourth inversion is make it unsatisfying. Behaviors that are rewarded get repeated. So to break a habit, remove the reward or attach a consequence. Accountability is powerful here. When someone else knows your commitments, your behavior changes. Habit contracts, coaches, partners, or even simple public accountability create social pressure that discourages repetition. When a bad habit carries consequences, embarrassment, or loss, it becomes far less appealing to repeat. But James Clear also emphasizes an important truth. Bad habits usually exist because they solve a real problem. Social media may provide connection. Procrastination may provide relief. Overeating may provide comfort. And complaining may provide emotional release. If you only remove a bad habit, you create a vacuum, and nature dislikes a vacuum. That's why the real solution is not just elimination, but replacement. Replace scrolling with reading, junk food with healthier options, procrastination with a small first step, and negative thoughts with constructive reflection. Finally, instead of only asking, "How do I stop this habit?" ask, "What need is this habit fulfilling?" Because when you understand the underlying craving, you can design a better solution that satisfies it in a healthier way. The key lesson is simple. Breaking bad habits is not about becoming superhuman or endlessly disciplined. It's about designing your environment so that bad habits become harder and less rewarding, while good habits become easier and more satisfying. Make them invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying, and always replace them with something better. Because lasting change doesn't come from constant self-control. It comes from building systems where good choices are the default and bad choices lose their power. At this point, we've covered the complete core framework of Atomic Habits. And now, we can bring everything together into the final takeaway of how small habits truly shape your entire life. How to apply Atomic Habits in real life. Now that we've explored the principles behind building good habits and breaking bad ones, the practical question is how to actually use these ideas in everyday life. Understanding habits is valuable, but real transformation happens only when knowledge turns into action. The good news is that applying Atomic Habits does not require a complete life overhaul. You don't need a perfect routine. You don't need endless motivation, and you don't need to change everything at once. Instead, James Clear encourages starting small and focusing on consistency. The first step is deciding who you want to become. Most people begin by asking what they want to achieve, but a more powerful question is who they want to become. Do you want to become a reader, a healthy person, a disciplined student, a skilled writer, or a better communicator? Your habits should be chosen based on the identity you want to build, because every habit is essentially a vote for the type of person you want to become. The second step is to start with one tiny habit. Once you've chosen your identity, choose one very small action that supports it. Not something big or overwhelming, but something almost effortless. If you want to become a reader, read one page. If you want to become healthier, do one push-up. If you want to become a writer, write one paragraph. The goal is not immediate transformation, but consistency, because small habits are easier to repeat, and repeated actions create lasting change. The third step is to attach the new habit to an existing routine so you don't rely on memory alone. Give your habit a clear cue by linking it to something you already do daily. For example, after brushing your teeth, you read 1 page. After breakfast, you study for 2 minutes. Or after sitting at your desk, you write 1 paragraph. A clear cue makes the habit easier to remember and perform. The 4th step is to make it easy to succeed by removing obstacles and reducing friction. Prepare in advance and design your environment in your favor. If you want to read, keep a book nearby. If you want to exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before. If you want to study, organize your workspace beforehand. The easier a habit becomes, the more likely you are to stick with it. The 5th step is to track your progress using a notebook, calendar, app, or simple check marks. Tracking creates awareness and helps maintain momentum because seeing progress reinforces consistency. The final step is to never miss twice. No one is perfect, and mistakes are normal. You will have busy days and miss habits occasionally, but what matters is how quickly you return. Missing once is an event, but missing twice can become a pattern. So the key is to get back on track immediately. Consistency is not about perfection, but persistence. At its core, Atomic Habits is not just a book about habits, but a book about transformation. It teaches that remarkable results do not come from dramatic changes, but from small improvements repeated consistently over time. Your future is shaped by what you do repeatedly, and the habits you follow every day influence your health, knowledge, relationships, success, and ultimately who you become. So instead of trying to change everything overnight, focus on the next small action, the next good choice, and the next habit. Because success is rarely built in a single moment, but through countless small decisions made day after day. And those small decisions have the power to change everything.